The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. O holy God, as we are gathered here today, we call upon you to provide for and to dwell among this session of the Minnesota House of Representatives. Each person here has received a calling to serve their community, to represent the needs of their constituents, to seek justice and to love mercy, and to walk in humility and kindness. We thank you, God, for their commitment and their service. We also know that the late nights and the endless emails, the hard decisions that each one of them has made can only be attended to because each of these leaders is embedded and held within a network of family members, friends, and communities. God, we pray for those who are working behind the scenes, upholding these leaders and empowering them in their callings. As the session convenes, we pray, God, that you would provide wisdom and discernment for all who are gathered. In the midst of limitations and disagreements, would you creatively imbue within them a vision of possibility, abundance, and hope? The prophet Isaiah says that God will make a way in the wilderness and provide rivers in the desert. God, help these leaders be way makers. Let them creatively discover paths forward in the face of challenges and obstacles. While engaged in this transformative work, would you also, God, help us to see one another with your eyes, recognizing that even our fiercest opponents were fearfully and wonderfully made with deep care and deep purpose. May nothing today be done out of selfish ambition, rather in humility. Let us value one another above ourselves, listening with purpose and learning from one another. God, we lift the coming session into your loving, just, holy, and worthy hands, and trusting it to you in the name of your incarnate love. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Melissa Shazer, Groups and Community Life, pastor of Groups and Community Life at Christ Presbyterian Church in Edina, Minnesota. Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. A quorum is present. Announcements. I recognize a member from Washington, Representative Cha.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. On behalf of the MAP caucus and the Hmong community, we would like to provide lunch for all members of the House, including staff and the Sergeant of Arms, as a token of gratitude and appreciation for recognizing and acknowledging the secret guerrilla unit heroes and their families. We would like to thank the members of the Minnesota House of Representatives for their collaborative work during this legislative session. In the balcony, I have members from my community who helped organize this. And we have Mo Chang, who is my niece from Mo's Tropical Fruit, Dr. Li Pa Shong from Concordia, and Wayne Tao from Community. And so members, in the retirement room, I have food, lots of drinks, and lots of fruits for everybody in the House of Representatives. So please enjoy. Thank you, Speaker.
The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 94th Session, 2025, 40th Legislative Day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Saturday, May 17th, 2025.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Introduction of bills. The following House files have been offered for introduction today. The chief clerk will report the House files and give them their first reading.
Introduction of first reading of House Files 3337 through 3346.
First reading, House Files 3337 through 3346. Conference committee reports.
Conference committee report on House File number 2446, an act relating to state government, establishing a budget for the Department of Agriculture. The report is addressed to the Honorable Lisa M. Damuth, Speaker of the House, the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate. We, the undersigned conferees for House File number 2446, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 6 of the 6 members on the part of the House and 2 of the 3 members on the part of the Senate. Anderson P.H. moves that the report of the Conference Committee on House File number 2446 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the author from Pope, Representative Anderson P.H., who will explain the report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and welcome back, members, on a beautiful afternoon. This is the Ag Bill, as was mentioned. I might add it was passed resoundingly off the floor a couple of weeks ago, and it came back very similar to what it was when we voted it off here. A couple of exceptions. There's a couple of pieces of policy the Senate had that we accepted, and also some fee increases that the Senate had in their bill that turned out to be non-negotiable. They pertain to grain license fees and to food handling fees. So they are in the bill. The other thing that happened to the bill was it got a little bit of a haircut. Our target got cut about in half from the previous bill that left the House. But I think we kept the programs, we kept the heart of the bill in the programs, even though they got a bit of a haircut. But the bill remains untouched in terms of the programs that both sides of the aisle feel were important to our respective caucuses. On this side of the aisle, I think our top priority all along has been maintaining funding for the Board of Animal Health, which is our first line of defense in terms of any livestock diseases that may show up in Minnesota. Outstanding operation by the Board of Animal Health. We also had funding for the Ag Emergency Account, county ag inspectors. We increased compensation, a badly needed part for those producers up in northern Minnesota for elk and wolf compensation. We maintained Minnesota's milk processing capacity, helping out First District. We had a piece in the bill for farm safety and innovation. Also a new piece, bioefficiency, to encourage farmers in limited areas of the state to reduce their use of fertilizer. Also increased funding for meat inspection in the bill. So, Madam Speaker, I will let Chair Hansen speak about the bill and talk about the priorities to his side of the aisle. Thanks, Madam Speaker.
I recognize a member from Dakota, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I would recommend adoption of the committee report. Before I get into the details, I want to make sure we thank our House committee staff, nonpartisan staff, Fiscal Analyst Ken Savory, House Research Analyst Megan Mullenbeck, House DFL Staff Committee Administrator Peter Strohmeyer, DFL Research Assistant Sean Haydorn, Committee Legislative Assistants Isabel Anderson, Leah Killian, and Grace Johnson. House GOP Staff Committee Administrator Mark Nisley, Committee Legislative Assistant Connie Edwards, and GOP Research Luke Bruin, and our Senate colleagues Fiscal Analyst Eric Olafson, Senate Counsel Laura Painter, Committee Administrator Nick Roth, and Committee Legislative Assistant Keely Spence. This is the agriculture bill, and I think it's important to think about the culture in agriculture. And we have often in the last, we're a quarter of a century, a quarter into this century, 25 years. And we've had a very traditional, kind of a broad bipartisan agreement on what was important in agriculture. But agriculture, the culture is constantly changing. And this bill is a hybrid. It's a hybrid of kind of that traditional. It is bringing together the House GOP, the House DFL, the Senate, and the executive branch and preparing a good mix, a good hybrid that I think lays the foundation for the future. A little bit to our DFL side here, we continue to focus on food programs and trying to help restore some of those losses from the federal government. We focus on worker protection, that if we are dealing with an avian influenza outbreak, we have been lucky so far this spring that we would be making sure we provide for the workers. And I think that's part of the whole issue with agriculture. It's not just the farmers. It's the farm workers. It's the people who produce the food, process the food, prepare the food, and then ultimately those of us who eat the food. We do have some big changes in here, differences than we've done before. We do not have a lot of named grants, and we established an AgriWorks program. You will not see some of the familiar names in the spreadsheet because we make those grants competitive. And we believe that lays an additional foundation and fairness. You shouldn't have to have a lobbyist to be able to get public support for farming. You should have the merit of that competition. So I would ask for the support. It's a good bill, and we'd like to get this into law.
There being no further discussion, all those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee report say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, House File Number 2446, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I also want to thank everyone who was involved in the conference committee process. It was my first one, so I appreciate the opportunity and learned quite a bit. I do think that there is a misconception out there that the agriculture bill is a Republican bill. It's not. It is a bipartisan bill. After all, we are the DFL, with the F standing for farmers. And so I do want to emphasize that this is a good bipartisan bill. And for my part, I was really focusing on building resilient communities as part of this bill. And I think last time, I think Rick mentioned it, or sorry, Co-Chair Hansen mentioned it, that we, experienced some federal cuts. I mistakenly said $3 million last time I spoke to this bill a couple weeks ago. It's actually $13 million. And so we have some really, really great funds that try to make up for some of those cuts. We have $6.8 million over the next 4 years to local food purchasing assistance programs and milk programs, milk distribution programs. And then an extra $1.2 million in funding to farm to school and early care programs as well. Now, of course, those don't make up for the $13 million in federal cuts, but they do ameliorate some of that damage. And I do also want to say that we defended funding for urban agriculture. Co-Chair Hansen mentioned kind of a changing culture within agriculture, and for me, those local programs supporting small farmers and laborers in agriculture really is the key to supporting resilient communities, which is something that I wanted to do and advocate for as we were putting this bill together. One more thing, we did provide $1.5 million to an emergency fund to test for avian flu in case that decides to rear its ugly head, half of which goes to testing workers in the supply chain as we work through to eventually getting those products to the consumer. As Co-Chair Anderson mentioned, we had funding for meat inspection. Overall, there's a bevy of worker protections, consumer protections in between in this bill. This is a great bipartisan bill, and I would ask everyone for a green vote. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Winona, Representative Jacob.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to speak just a little bit to the word, I'll say, balance. In the past couple of years, it seemed as though if we talked about organic farming, somehow conventional farming was bad. Or if we talked about small farming, somehow large farming was bad. Or if we were supporting urban agriculture, then rural agriculture must be what we're fighting against. But the balance this year, and I'm not going to speak to specific numbers in the bill, but the balance this year is that we're supporting all agriculture. We're not picking winners, we're not picking losers, we're not singling out one person versus the other. And this agriculture is one of Minnesota's biggest industries. So we need to support agriculture. We need to support all types and sizes of agriculture. We need to feed the world. And we're doing so much better of a job at that this year than what we've done the last 2 years. It's been frustrating for me to not be able to support the Ag Bill for the last 2 years, but I'm enthused and excited to be able to support the Ag Bill this year, and I encourage a green vote. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Olmsted, Representative Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Like a lot of the speakers before me, I will encourage members to vote green on this bill. While it's not a perfect bill, it is a good bill. And I do think, again, it's worth taking a pause, and we're talking about feeding people a lot in the agriculture space, that we were put into a deficit, a hole that we had to try to climb out of because of the federal government. Just in fiscal year 2025, the federal government canceled $13.3 million to purchase food for schools and $4.7 million to cover products for food banks. Just this year, that's not in the biennium, that's in fiscal year 2025. We were never going to be able to climb up that hill and make up for it. I wish we had gone a little further up that hill than this bill goes, but we do make really great strides at making up for that and feeding folks who are going to find themselves without food because of those federal cuts. One thing I want to highlight is the local food purchasing assistance, the LFPA programs, which our department says is the first state-level program of this kind in the nation. Because that federal program was cut, we are picking up the slack here in Minnesota, or as much of the slack as we can. And I'm really proud of that work. We need to do better continually as we come back more. No one in Minnesota should go hungry. So I'm really proud of other programs like the Universal Meals Program and other areas to continue that work. One other very local thing I want to thank both the chairs and all the conferees about is our study for our soil health in Olmsted County. Olmsted County started a fantastic program during the pandemic with some extra funds we got from the feds to try to bring down the nitrate level in our groundwater, in our soil. And with a system of accountability, by listening, by working with farmers in our county, we have actually seen those levels come down. Now, they're not to safe levels yet, certainly, but we have seen those come down. And other counties around Olmsted have seen that progress and would like to be a part of the program. So I had a bill to give some funding to Olmsted County to be able to expand that to the counties surrounding. Now, I don't have to tell you all, there's not a lot of money around here these days. So we weren't able to fund that completely, but the $75,000 study that is in this bill, in this conference report, will be able to start the process of expanding that to all of southeastern Minnesota. Now, the problem of nitrates in the soil is we'll need a full court press, a lot of different programs, and this is one step in that direction. So thank you to both the chairs for that and for this bill overall. Again, I recommend a green vote.
I recognize a member from Roseau, Representative Burkle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to reiterate something that Chair Hansen mentioned about the culture of agriculture. It's definitely changed. The culture in agriculture is changing. But one thing is for certain, agriculture today, with the technology and innovation we see, has created abundance beyond what we could ever imagine. And I want everyone to understand that it's that technology and innovation that's created that. It's allowed the opportunity for the expendable income we have to run around buying $5, $6, $8 cups of coffee. So let's remember that the culture we have today in agriculture allows the abundance we enjoy. Specifically related to this bill, I want to highlight the money for the Ag Emergency Account in response to high-path avian influenza. We've seen the price on the wholesale level of egg prices drop dramatically. We're going to see that follow through into the stores. A lot of that has to do with how the Board of Animal Health has handled high-path AI. Funding for the Board of Animal Health is extremely important, and I'm glad to see that in the bill is increased. And beyond that, in Ag Protection Services, this section of the bill that funds the wolf and elk depredation that dramatically affects my district, meat inspection, county ag inspectors for noxious weeds, all of which rural Minnesota needs. So with that, I'll close. I'd encourage everyone to vote green on this bill. This bill makes Minnesota's ag and food industry much more competitive. Thank you, Madam Chair, or Speaker.
Further discussion to the bill? I recognize Representative Van Binsbergen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Chair Anderson and Chair Hansen for their work on this ag bill today. I want to stand in support of farmers in Minnesota. You know, agriculture is the backbone to our economy, and it's a pillar in our country. Agriculture supports over 430,000 jobs in Minnesota, and it contributes billions to the state GDP. I grew up in a home that was supported by agriculture. We grew corn and beans, and we raised cattle and hogs. And I'm not a farmer today, and I don't own any farmland. But I understand the pressures and the stress that many of our farmers endure. The stress of not knowing if they're going to have a crop at the end of the year. The stress of dealing with livestock. The stress of the input costs today that farmers endure. The high price of fertilizer and seed, fuel, labor, equipment, insurance, interest rates. And yet prices and their income is affected by demand, and it's affected by weather. So I stand up for the 65,000 farm families in Minnesota. This bill here also today provides much needed relief for the dairy industry. The dairy industry in the last 7 years has seen a 40% decline in the number of farms. You know, being a dairy farmer takes hard work. You got to get up early. You got to milk those cows twice a day. And usually it's at 5 in the morning and 5 at night, and it takes a whole family. Typically, most of the farms and dairy farms, it's an entire family that's part of that operation. So this bill today, as I mentioned, adds relief, and it's going to have an immediate impact on 600. It's going to have an immediate impact on 600 farms across 45 counties in Minnesota. First District Association processes 40% of the milk in Minnesota. And they've been a leader and they've been an innovator since 1921. Their economic impact has been great across Minnesota, across the country, and it's affected all of us at the grocery store when we buy our dairy products. So I just want to encourage all of you to support this bill today. And again, I want to thank both chairs for their hard work that they put in on this. And I just encourage everybody to vote green on the ag bill. Vote for farmers.
I recognize Representative Roach.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the chairs for their work on this bill. Obviously, as has been stated before, there's some things in here that aren't great as far as some fees. Well, one of the things that I want to recognize and appreciate is the work that was done for the cottage food bakers of Minnesota. Provision in here that allows them to ship their products and is going to have a huge impact on many of those cottage food bakers in the state. And you know, they're the small business owners in my local community, you know, that partake in the farmers markets and just want to have an opportunity to be able to get their products to as many people. So I appreciate the work that was done by the committee and the chairs, and just thank you guys for your work.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Feist.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was not going to speak on this bill. I do support this bill. I just thought this might be an opportune moment to remind the body that 40% of farm workers are undocumented immigrants. They play a really critical role in the farming industry. And I saw an ad recently for blueberry farm workers. They pay $11 an hour, 9 to 10 hours a day, 7 days per week. That doesn't seem like a job that a lot of U.S. workers want. So as we vote on this bill, which I support, I think we should just remember that the agricultural industry is deeply dependent on undocumented immigrants. Thank you.
Further discussion? I recognize Representative Hansen.
Again, recognizing that agriculture is changing, focus on the culture and agriculture, those that are the producers, those are the preparers, those that are the providers, and those that are the consumers. This is a good bill. It's a hybrid. It's evolving agriculture. We're setting our state up for the future. A yes vote, I would ask for.
I recognize the author, Representative Anderson, PH.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whenever we talk about agriculture, I like to throw in an item that may give folks an idea of what it's like and how expensive farming can be. Yesterday, I don't know if anybody noticed, I had I thought a pretty sporty vest on a Saturday, and my seatmate, Representative Davids, inquired about it, and it had a label up here from an implement dealer. And he asked something about what this vest cost. And I said, well, I got it when I bought a corn planter. So actually, this vest cost me $350,000. So that's what a corn planter can cost, and they threw in the vest, and I said, thank you. But just an idea that in agriculture, production ag, you are talking a lot of capital, a lot of risk, and a lot of faith in the guy upstairs to get a crop through in the fall. And we're thankful it didn't freeze last night. We're thankful we got some rain this week. But farming is an honorable task. I really enjoyed serving with the committee members on both sides of the aisle. Kind of a good mix of rural people and people that live closer here to the metro and learned a lot, I think, about agriculture. So thank you to all of you, and I would appreciate a green vote. Thank you.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 130 ayes and 4 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference, and its title is agreed to. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. Madam Speaker, I hereby announce that the Senate has concurred in and adopted the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 2298, an act relating to housing. The message is signed Thomas S. Boddern, Secretary of the Senate. The report is addressed to the Honorable Bobby Joe Champion, President of the Senate, and the Honorable Lisa M. Damuth, Speaker of the House of Representatives. We, the undersigned conferees for Senate File Number 2298, report that we've agreed upon the items in dispute and recommend as follows. The report is signed by 4 of the 4 members on the part of the House and 2 of the 3 members on the part of the Senate. I move that the report of the Conference Committee on Senate File Number 2298 be adopted and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Conference Committee.
I recognize the author from Itasca, Representative Igo, who will explain the report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, yes, we have a good conference committee report in front of us with the budget targets that were reached. Unfortunately, our bill did get a little bit of a haircut coming from the House. We went from a $75 million target down to a $15 million target, which is always a bummer, but I do want to give credit to both the Republican and Democrat leaders in this chamber for fighting for our target, that we did get an increase this year in housing because it is that important. In our committee, I've talked about a lot about how it's important that we address affordability and diversity in housing so that we can create stability for every single home here in Minnesota. And when we took that $15 million target, the conferees were really able to come together and spread that money out in a good way. So I do want to go over that. We were able to put $2 million more into the Challenge program, which is a statewide program to help build more affordable homes. We also were able to put $2 million into workforce home ownership, $2 million into the Greater Minnesota infrastructure grants, $2 million into community-based first-time homebuyer grants, and we were also able to put $8.3 million into FHPAP to be able to help people across the state if they are in a crisis and need help to prevent them from being homeless. There is going to be more dollars there to help those people. So I'm proud to say that that approach looked at all those different pillars I previously mentioned and has found a way to make sure we're supporting all Minnesotans. There's also some good policy that ended up in the bill. We have some transparency language that is going to require reports be sent to the chairs and ranking members in the House and Senate when Minnesota Housing Finance Agency moves dollars, so we know about things that are going on there. There's also policy in there to allow for adaptive reuse of buildings using housing infrastructure bonds, which is a great idea and a way for us to, again, diversify housing in this state. With that note, I do want to mention that we were able to get $3.8 million in the tails to allow for $50 million in HIBs, which is a great tool for, again, building housing across this state, which is with a really even split. It's about 50-50 between our metro and greater Minnesota, which is really fantastic. And finally, there was a little bit of cleanup language around the scoring policy that was talked about on the House floor. This is the first step in the right direction to addressing land use and zoning as a larger issue across our state. It's going to be directing the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency when they're creating their RFPs for grants that they're going to be giving out, that there would be preferential points given up to 5%, and this program would be on a 4-year sunset for cities that are adopting affirmative land use and zoning policies. So that's a quick rundown of the conference committee report, but I will defer to my fellow co-chair for further comments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll have just a few quick comments and maybe a few words on third reading, but I want to echo my co-chair's comments that this is a good bill, and we'll do good things for Minnesotans within this budget target. Also want to express some disappointment. We had a much stronger bill coming off this House floor as Democrats and Republicans in the House. The commitment we put into housing was a much more significant commitment than was made by the governor and the Senate, and that led to our target being shrunk significantly in this bill. But we did great bipartisan work. I want to thank Co-Chair Igo and all the members of the committee. I also want to thank our amazing housing staff, both partisan and nonpartisan staff that worked together long hours to get to this very strong bill. I want to thank all of the members of our committee, Vice Chair Kozlowski, and a strong team on our side of the aisle, and a great team on the Republican side as well. This is a good bill. I'll have a few more comments on third reading, but look forward to a yes vote, a big green board to support a lot of good things in housing this year.
There being no further discussion, all of those in favor of the motion to adopt the conference committee, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by conference.
Third reading, Senate File Number 2298, as amended by conference.
Third reading as amended by conference. Further discussion to the bill. I recognize the member from Carver, Representative Nash.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have enjoyed serving on the Housing Committee for the last 4 years. I think this is a step in the right direction, but I want to take us back to a lot of the things that I have said for years, and I want to talk about why we keep getting stalled out and how that does not help the state of Minnesota at all. I've said a number of times that home is one of the most powerful words that you're ever going to hear. It's one of the things that you say when you've had a bad day, I'm going to go home, because your people are waiting there for you. It gives the idea of stability. And as we have said in the Housing Committee, a stable home means more people adding to a stable community, means more people contributing to the community, means more kids getting a better education because they've got that stability that they can rely on and lean on and depend on. The solution to housing is not just money, though. It's not. And I think all the housing committee members would agree the same thing. It's not just predicated on how much you spend in the budget year of the biennium. We have a problem in the state of Minnesota. We are 106 or more thousand housing units undersupplied, and money is not the way forward. What is needed is reform. Reform of land use and zoning, and it's been done in other states, red states and blue states alike. So if it's happening in a red state and a blue state, you would think that in a purple state we could maybe get something done. But we haven't. And for those of you that have kids like I do in the age of the 25 to 29 year age range, they cannot buy a house in Minnesota. And that's a really awful thing. You know, my wife is pushing all of our older kids. She's having the grandparent talk. And if that were to happen, our kids would not be living near us, and it would not be that 10-minute car ride to go visit Grandma and Grandpa. That's both bad and fixable. We have to be willing to do, as the red states and the blue states alike have said, is we need some regulatory change. And the roadblock to that is the culture of no. No, we can't have any change. No, that would be bad. No, we don't want to give up anything. And that comes from a lot of outside groups that are cities and counties and other folks who are saying, oh, we can't do that. And I'll tell you, folks, when you have members of the housing community that have been trying to do stuff that is both workable and respectful to those people who are the culture of no, we work really hard to try to gain consensus, and it just keeps going on and on and on, and in the end, the clock runs out and you get slow played. If we do not make meaningful reform to land use and zoning, all the money in the world is not going to fix the problem. Because when you talk to the people who say no, and you say, okay, perhaps you can share an alternative viewpoint for me, perhaps you have a solution that you can share with us, what is your idea on how to fix the problem? Very often you get a blank stare back. And they say, well, if we could just have a little more money. Money is not the solution. So to the team that was on the conference committee, to the team that was in the committee during the regular part of the year, I say we have more work to do. I will give you my commitment to continue to try to find a solution that is workable. But fundamentally, we have to not let the people who are standing by the sideline clutching their pearls saying that you can't do that to win the day anymore. You cannot allow that to persist. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Hussein.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. Let's be honest, this bill is not the perfect bill in the House, but it's a step forward. It's a bill that could pass today to provide some relief, family struggling to keep a roof over their heads. Yes, we are investing $8 million in emergency rental assistance. Yes, we are allocating $6 million for construction for Greater Minnesota. Yes, we are dedicated $4 million first-generation home buyers assistance to close the racial home ownership gap. But let's not ourselves. We still have a lot of work to do. We're still facing housing crisis that is impacting families, seniors, workers, children, and every corner of our state. The needs for affordable housing is urgent, and I want to make sure that we're funding when we come back next year. We need to discuss this, not enough to meet the scales that represent the state of Minnesota. We cannot afford for not us people not to have a place for them to live. When it comes to the state of Minnesota, the housing crisis, we are at the bottom. As a legislator, we need to come together and to work together to address that gap. We cannot depend on others, but we are the one who, community members and people has voted for us, and they are holding us accountable. This bill is a startup, and I want to thank for both chairs for working so hard, dedicated, and the staff, and the member of the housing committees. It was an easy task, but we came together to deliver what's right for the state of Minnesota and for the people to address that, the issue that is matter. Let's pass this bill and keep pushing for more resource for housings for the state of Minnesota to come. The issue that greater Minnesota has, we have also the same issue in the metro state, the Twin Cities, any counties. I believe if we address the housing issue, we are addressing healthcare, we are addressing homelessness, we are addressing jobs that reflect for our state. Housing is the pace, and it's the fundamental for us to live. For growing up, I lived in my life in public housings. It was tough for me and my mother's. Raised by a single mother in the state of Minnesota. My dad wasn't here. Our brothers and sisters living in 2 bedrooms wasn't enough. Going to school, I could not help. But we need to uplift the people that really need in the state of Minnesota for affordable housing. It's an issue that we keep ignoring. And I want to thank you all. Let's vote for this bill, and let's finish it, cross the line, and let's come back next year and the year after and address the crisis that we see in the state of Minnesota. Thank you.
I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Johnson W.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is my first year in the housing, which is convenient since it's my first year here. But it was a very interesting, challenging. I would like to commend and recognize our 2 chairs, Chair Igo and Chair Howard. They had a very tough job. We had a lot of people coming to us and telling us the challenges that are out there, and as it was touched on, Representative Nash has touched on some of the numbers that were brought up as the lack of housing and how do we get there. And one of the things that, everybody, this is not a quote to me, but you're all going to recognize this, but I believe we have a lot of power down here. And with great power requires great responsibility. And I also like to follow that up. As I tell people, I don't like to come up with solutions that can cause or will cause more challenges. And so that's very important as we looked into this, and we had a lot of options, things we could have done. We also need to make sure we look into all of the issues that are causing the problems. And just doing one like we talked about the missing middle and stuff like that. We have to understand that there's more than just doing regulations. We also have to look at the core things, which is labor, materials, and everything that goes into that. Do I wish this bill could have done more? Yes, I do. I was working with manufactured homes, and we heard some very troubling stories. We heard stories of people that they're dealing with. They're the owners of the property that they live in. Same thing with seniors and their senior housing. And one thing that I wish we could have done more. We have a line item in here to help with infrastructure. Something I believe got left out was offering opportunity money there to buy the homes. One thing I want to make sure that when we're going out and we're trying to come up with solutions is we do not take samples of a few bad situations and assume everybody is that way. There's many good people out there that own manufactured homes, And when we come up with solutions, we have to make sure it doesn't make their life harder, which then makes their tenants harder to live in. So I look forward to going into doing future work with the housing. There is a lot of work we need to do. I just think that we really have to be careful for very thought out, long-term solutions and make sure we don't have any short-term, quick solutions that are eventually going to come right back at us. And we're right back in the beginning point and saying, now what do we do? So again, thank you. I really enjoyed working on the committee with all the members. I think we came up with some good ideas. Were there some things left on the floor that we couldn't do? Yes. I look forward to continue working with the manufactured homes and the senior homes and people as we address this issue. Ultimately, we just have to get more homes built, and that will solve a lot of problems, and we have to make sure and find ways how we can get more homes built. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Engen.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to both the chairs for all the work that you guys have done. It has been pretty cool to watch from afar, just the relationship that you guys have and being able to craft a bill that is able to be voted on with a yes on both sides. But as we're talking about some of the housing issues and housing constraints that are hurting my generation, making it damn near impossible for us to be able to afford a home, I do want to mention something that I think has some bipartisan support that I'm looking to work on with Representative Agbaje, and we've engaged in some really meaningful dialogue in the past. When a single mom working 2 jobs with 2 kids goes and tries to put a down payment on a house, it's a problem for me when a hedge fund like BlackRock comes along and says, no, we're going to outbid you time and time again. We're going to jack up that housing cost. We're going to make it impossible for you to ever make that purchase. And then we'll actually offer you a lease with rents that are simply too high. That is an issue. And I think in the future we can find some meaningful dialogue and a solution to address this that still allows for folks who make a living off of fixing up homes to rent them out. But we need to be able to draw a line as well. So I again appreciate the work that you guys have done and look forward to those conversations in the future. Thank you.
I recognize the member from St. Louis, Representative Scraba.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First time on housing, it was a great experience. I can tell you a story that one of the people spoke to me. They live in a park home, and when they bought into it, it was $600 a month. And this lady was, she came to the committee looking for a solution. And I was like, shouldn't the county be helping you? Shouldn't the city be helping you? And they're not. So they came to our committee. And I'm looking at this problem. It was $600, then it went to $900, then it's $1,200 per month. There's 450 homes, parcels in that park area. And I started doing the math on it, and I'm like, you're getting squeezed. The new owners that bought it are raising the rent to get you out so that they can develop the land for something else. And as someone who doesn't like when government steps in, I'm like, there's got to be a better solution to this. And there's not. And kind of what Representative Engen just talked about, when the BlackRock show up with deep pockets, we have to do an introspective and look at ourselves and say, is this capitalist? Is this the best way for our communities to grow? And I'm new at this game, and I'm learning it, and I'm really just trying to decide, where does government fit here? How can we help and still keep the capitalistic way going? And I think we're doing a bad job of it right now. I'm hoping this bill helps a little bit, but, and another thing we have to look at in housing from greater Minnesota, what I've seen in northern Minnesota, is I watch the elderly hang in as long as they can in their home, and then they go to a nursing home. They go somewhere, and they can't afford it. They take their life savings, and that's gone in 2 years, 3 years. And then government helps them live in that home. And I'm wondering if there's some way we can start looking at helping. Happen to listen to a podcast, Qatar. They don't have any nursing homes. They don't have any of that because their elderly are taken care of by their families. Can we reward families so we don't have to have nursing homes? Can we do that? Can we start looking at that? Because this is going to, I'm a boomer. I'm 61. I'm not quite the end, but I'm in towards the end. And there's going to be a lot of us looking for services. And what's going to be the best way? I think we need to look at this deeper and try to figure this out together. I have to absolutely thank Representative Igo and Representative Howard. Thank you guys very much. You're an inspiration too, because you guys work well across the aisle, and I wish more of us would do more of that. It's a big deal, and I look forward to voting green on this bill. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Further discussion to the bill? I recognize a member from Anoka, Representative Norris.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wanted to address the manufactured housing topic since it's come up a couple of times on both sides of the aisle, and just want to express my thanks for the bipartisan interest and support of this. And Representative Scrabble, I think you were spot on when you were wondering, how does the manufactured housing model fit within our capitalistic economy? And I think that is why it is appropriate for us to be looking at what sort of intervention should we be making here at the state level in manufactured home parks. I also support the free market, but because of the unique nature of manufactured home park communities, this is not an efficient marketplace. What you have with manufactured housing is a situation where the residents often own their homes but rent the land underneath them. And despite the fact that they are called mobile homes, once they've been in one place for a couple of years, they're not particularly mobile. And so you have a situation where if a private equity firm comes in and buys up the park and starts jacking up the rents, all of a sudden these residents are forced to choose between walking away from the equity that they've built in their homes over all of these years, or finding a way to pay the rent. And that might mean, skimping on groceries, skimping on medicines, on gas. And that's why I think it is appropriate for us as a legislature to be looking at this. So this is something that I believe is predatory. There are conferences, this has been documented, you can see documentaries about this. There are conferences, national conferences, where people come to learn about buying manufactured home park communities. And the analogy that some of these folks who run these conferences use is that owning a manufactured home park is like owning a Waffle House where the customers are chained to the counter. Now that, to me, members, is not the free market. And so I was proud to bring forward the Manufactured Home Park Residents' Bill of Rights. We had a good discussion about it in the Housing Committee this year. There was a bipartisan discussion on it. And there's more work to do on it. We weren't able to get it across the finish line this year, but I'm hopeful, working with my friends on both sides of the aisle, that we're going to be able to fix this for our residents, because there are residents who are in this situation in blue districts and red districts across the state. I just had another park in my district bought up by a private equity firm. So there's a lot of work to do there, and I have to be honest, members, I am disappointed that there's nothing in this bill this year for manufactured housing residents. We did have the infrastructure money included when this left the House floor. It came back from conference without that money. We also need money for down payment assistance for residents. We need money for a revolving loan fund, so when parks go up for sale, residents can purchase their parks and turn them into co-ops so private equity firms don't buy these parks. So I'm excited about the fact that this has come up several times today, and I'm looking forward to working throughout the interim and next year with members on both sides of the aisle to really fix this issue that we're seeing as a pervasive one across our entire state. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Further discussion to the bill? I recognize a member from Hennepin, Representative Howard.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the discussion. Just a few more comments before we vote yes on this bill. I am very grateful that the majority of our target is going into FHPAP, which is a resource that's going to help keep folks in their home when they're facing a housing crisis. These dollars are administered in all 87 counties and is an absolute lifeline to prevent families from experiencing homelessness. And I want to thank our members on both sides for recognizing this priority and putting it in the bill. And the programs that we're investing in, including the housing infrastructure bonds, workforce home ownership, challenge, these are bread and butter investments that, but for these public investments, the types of housing we're talking about here wouldn't be built. And I think that's important to mention. We do need to be making more investments in housing. When I think about greater Minnesota, what we hear time and again is that the math doesn't math to do the workforce housing projects that are so necessary. And some of the investments in this bill will help make that occur. And when we're talking especially about our most deeply affordable housing, rental housing for our low-wage hourly workers, folks like that, but for public investment, we would not be able to build that kind of housing, and so it's so vital. As I've said, members, this is a good bill, but I want to be clear, it's not nearly good enough. And we just have to be clear about that. Folks have heard this analogy before. You're probably getting sick of it, but we have some new numbers to run, so I need to mention it again. If our state's general fund budget was an entire gallon jug of water, under this new budget we're about to adopt, we're spending 0.2% on housing. It's about like that. It's less than a tablespoon. And when you think about the importance, as Representative Nash mentioned, of home for all of us, to think that our budget, which is a show of our values, that we're putting a 0.2% of 1% into housing says something. And it says to me that we need to find new and creative ways to invest in our people and invest in housing. So those are just numbers, but what does that mean for people? So I want to go back to emergency rental assistance. In 2023, this legislature invested $100 million in emergency rental assistance, and that kept 30,000 Minnesotans in their home, provided that stability when they hit that rough patch so that they could keep that stability and grow and have economic security. Under this budget, we are only able to invest an additional $8 million in housing in FHPAP. And the delta there is that 22,000 fewer families over the next 2 years will have access to that emergency rental assistance. And we're already starting to see, with those $23, $24 winnowing, increases in eviction rates, increases in homelessness. And folks, we just need to be eyes wide open. I expect the state of Minnesota to see homelessness go up in our state. And a part of it is because we're not providing the adequate investments. I want to talk about our housing shortage. We are investing in ways to build hundreds, maybe 1,000 or so new homes. But as folks have mentioned, we have a 100,000 unit housing shortage. And the kinds of investments that we make through housing infrastructure bonds, through workforce housing, again, we need to make those investments. Public investment in housing is vital. There is not a solution to our housing shortage without massive investments in housing. But as folks have mentioned, it is dollars alone will not solve our housing shortage. Conservatively, if we were to solve our 100,000 unit housing shortage just with public dollars, it would cost $35 billion with the B dollars. I want to see us make more investments like our $1 billion investment in 23-24, but let's be clear, we need to unlock the building and construction of our housing market. We need to reduce barriers to make it easier to build more homes, especially the kinds of homes that Minnesotans are so desperate to find in the communities where they grew up and they cannot. And so my challenge to this body is that we need to be in yes and mode. Yes on investments that will provide permanent and ongoing commitment of our values that housing is a priority. And yes, on big policy change. Yes, on our Yes to Homes agenda that makes it easier to build the homes that Minnesotans want. If we do those things, and I'll add a few to the list. Thank you, Representative Engen, for mentioning the corporate home ownership issue that takes away power and opportunity for Minnesotans. If we do these things, what we can do is put more power in the hands of our constituents of Minnesotans to seek out and achieve the American dream. And we have a necessary, I would say it's necessary that we think outside the box and do things differently if we're going to achieve that. Lastly, what I want to say is just bring a few words of Minnesotans to this debate that were present as we debated the housing work this year. Tyrone testified in our committee in relation to a home that he secured through a public investment through housing infrastructure bonds. And he said, before getting this housing, I was homeless for more than 20 years. It's been 3 years since I've been housed, and since then I've gone back to school, I've received my BA, I'm gainfully employed, I got my family back, I got my life back. That is the life-changing investment that's included when we say yes to housing infrastructure bonds in this bill, and we should be doing more of it. Renee told us that getting emergency rental assistance dollars through FHPAP saved us. And she testified and wants to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind. And members, we just have to sit with the fact that we are leaving too many Minnesotans behind this year, in this bill, in this moment. We need to do better. For every story of Tyrone and Renee, there are many, many more of parents working 2 to 3 jobs just to make the rent. Of kids who don't know where they're going to sleep at night, who are struggling in their school because they don't have that foundation of housing security. Young people desperate to buy a home and just having to put that off year over year over year. Seniors who are our state's largest growing population of homelessness in our state, struggling to age in their home, struggling to find a place to downsize, struggling to have that security that we all need. Those are Minnesotans that I hope when we leave this chamber that we're talking with and conversing with in our communities so that we come back ready to do big things that make housing a reality for more Minnesotans next session. So I'm grateful to this body. Of course, vote yes on this bill that will do some good, but it's not good enough. We have more work to do, and I look forward to doing that work together with all of you in the years to come. Thank you.
I recognize a member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, members, for the wonderful discussion today we had on this bill in front of us. I just want to reiterate thank you to my co-chair. It's been great working with you. Thank you to the members of the committee, and thank you to all the staff that worked so hard to get this conference committee turned around and back to us here on this Sunday afternoon. In closing, and my colleagues on both sides kind of took a lot of the words I was going to say, but thinking about how important it is that we start broadening our perspectives on what we need to do to address the issues that we have in housing in this state. Home is paramount to who we all are. And a way I think about it is this whole chamber, when someone asks you, why did you run for office? Why did you run for the House? What is the one thing you probably say that always comes to mind? Well, I ran for my home, my community, my home. Break that down smaller and smaller. Every single person we represent gets involved at some point in their life because of their home. Not just in today's day and age, but since the dawn of human history, people collaborated, went and formed coalitions, built cities, all because they built them out of their homes. And that's why the bill in front of us today, yes, takes a very good step, but it doesn't take the step that's needed to finally address the challenges that we have. And the elephant in the room is land use and zoning reform. And it should be in this bill today. And we are going to continue to work on it because it is critically important. And it's not like it's this brand new idea that we've brought up. And I've said that before, and I've had colleagues on the floor say that before. It is an idea that's been around for decades. And it's an idea that's continuing to gain momentum in states adjacent to us, in states that are red, in states that are blue. And the idea of this reform is getting at one of the core beliefs of not just the Minnesota Constitution, but the Constitution of the United States. and that's private property rights. Because by unleashing the personal property rights of people and unleashing the private and public markets, that's how we fix a 100,000 unit housing gap. Because my co-chair said it best, we could invest $35 billion today and it maybe would address our housing concerns. And the housing concerns we have are really, really bad. 43% members. In the last 5 years, the median household income needed to buy a house in the state of Minnesota went from $72,000 a year to $103,000 a year. The average median income of this state is only $83,000 a year. That's a $20,000 gap for every single Minnesotan family. And the simple answer to that is we don't have enough supply. So the bill in front of us today, again, went at what I talked about earlier. We need to have diverse, affordable options in housing. We're going to take a little crack at it. And like my co-chair said, we're maybe going to get 1,000 homes out of what we're investing in today. But that isn't even a dent at how big this problem is. So I encourage this chamber as we go towards the interim and we return home to our districts, to our communities, start vetting out those solutions. Find the ways to do this, because the dollar isn't going to fix it, and both sides of the aisle agree that. So how are we going to fix it? And there's a great option here that we're working on with the Yes to Homes agenda, with bills like the Starter Home Act, with bills that would lift up every single one of our communities, return that personal property choice to them to build the homes that they need, the homes that they want. So I hope today we can see a good vote in the right direction with this bill. I encourage the entire chamber's support. But when we return home, let's keep getting the work done, because next year is the year we need to finally address the obstacle and make this change for Minnesota so we can return stability to our state. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
There being no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 108 ayes and 26 nays, the bill is repassed as amended by conference, and its title is agreed to. Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions at the House desk and online. If there is no objection, we will take action on these motions first. Hearing no objection, the motions prevail.
Pursuant to the notice given on Wednesday, May 14th, 2025, IGO moves that House File Number 3023 be placed on and considered first on the calendar for the day.
Discussion to the motion. I recognize a member from Itasca, Representative Igo.
Yes, Madam Speaker, that is my motion, but however, I'm going to move right now to lay the motion on the table.
All those in favor, aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails. Announcements, Representative Niska. I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Long.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Democrats, we will caucus in our caucus room upon recess.
Further announcements? I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Niska.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Republicans, we will caucus in our caucus room upon recess. And Madam Speaker, I move a recess to the call of the Speaker.
Representative Niska moves a recess to the call of the Speaker. All of those in favor, aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion prevails and the House stands in recess.